Hi there, Marbozir, welcome to Civilization Beyond Earth. So, it's finally here, and I'm very excited to finally be playing it. I've been thinking about how exactly to handle this third series, because while I did play for a few hours before starting this recording, there are a lot of things that I still need to explore. So I decided to just title this series Let's Explore, because this is exactly what I will be doing. I will be playing a little bit slower than usual, and I will show you a lot of the options. So this is going to be kind of the introduction series, where I will continue exploring the game with you. So let's get started then. I will start by setting up a game, and I will stop to look through all the options. There are quite a lot of options on the setup, and they are quite interesting. This is one of the parts that I definitely like about Beyond Earth. So let's get into the details. First, this is fairly self-explanatory. There are difficulty levels, which range from beginner, normal, moderate, hard, very hard, and impossibly hard. Although, from my experience, Apollo isn't quite as hard as Deity in Civilization 5. This might have changed. But I'm going to play on Gemini for now, so that's technically hard difficulty. The AI players receive small advantages to improve their play. I could probably handle higher, but as I said, this is supposed to be a Let's Explore series, so we are going to explore the game together. I don't want to play on highest difficulty level just yet. The time for that will definitely come. The game pace is exactly the same as in Civilization 5, quick, standard, epic, and marathon. I will play on standard, although I'm sure I will probably move up to epic in the future. Or at least I will play some games on epic in the future. As for map size, now this is a little bit funny, because the map size ranges from dual to massive, but standard is actually the second biggest map. The only difference between standard and massive is that massive has more open space for exactly the same number of players. So the standard map has 8 players, and massive map also has 8 players, except with more open space. I might go with small. Actually, no, let's go with standard. Standard map is definitely big enough, as you will see. So accept. And now we need to choose our faction, or sponsor as it's called, but this is effectively equivalent of Civilization 5 leaders, factions, civilizations, whatever you want to call them. There are 8 currently, which is why 8 is the maximum number of players right now. I could go for random, and these factions play quite differently at times. I'm not actually sure which one I want to play for this one. I didn't actually decide which one I want to play. I played a few, definitely not all of them. I might go for Franco-Iberia. Free technology every 10 virtues is pretty good. Anything that gives you a free technology is generally quite good. I tried the Slavic Federation, and that was quite nice. The free technology that you can get allows for some really interesting slingshots. But I'll go with Franco-Iberia, maybe. +2 trade routes available in the capital is also quite nice at the start. Obviously, most of these factions have their strengths. +10% strength is going to be quite nice for domination. So I'm sure I will play Brasilia for domination sooner or later, since that's my usual style. Alright, let's go for Franco-Iberia for this game. So, next. Now, we can choose our colonies, which gives you some extra benefit. So, from top to bottom, we can choose scientists, which will give us +2 science in every city. We can choose refugees, which will give us +2 food in every city. We can get +3 energy and +1 health in every city, +2 production in every city, and +2 culture, +1 health in every city. Health is basically equivalent of happiness from Civilization 5. That's pretty much what it is. And this is actually a very important choice, which will affect the game a lot. I'm a big fan of population, because population affects pretty much everything, but early extra production is also quite good. Early extra science is quite good. All of these choices are pretty damn good and have their own strengths. I think I'll go for science. You can't go wrong with science. So +2 science in every city. Alright, then we can choose spacecraft, which will give us certain benefits right at the start of the game. And these are quite interesting. So we can reveal all coasts on the map which will be better with some map types than others. We can get a wider area for choosing when to land the first city, because the way it works in Beyond Earth, you do not get a settler on turn 0 and then you can move that settler around and settle the city where you want. You get to choose which tile you want to settle your capital city on. You can't just move a unit around. You have to click a tile within certain radius. And Retrograde Thrusters basically increases that radius. You'll see what I mean as soon as I get into the game. We can also get Tectonic Scanner, which reveals some of the strategic resources on the map, which you normally need to get technology for. Now, there aren't as many strategic resources or resources that require a technology to be revealed in Beyond Earth as in Civilization 5, but Tectonic Scanner can be quite nice, because these are important resources which you definitely want to get. We can get extra 100 energy right at the start, which can be quite nice. And we can reveal alien nests on the map. Aliens are basically barbarians of Beyond Earth, but they are much more than barbarians from Civilization 5. They are much more than barbarians. I think I'll go for Tectonic Scanner. I do like Retrograde Thrusters a lot, because the exact location of your capital city is so important. That has always been the case in Civilization games. It's very important in Civilization 5. And it's still extremely important in Beyond Earth. So Retrograde Thrusters is a very nice one, but I like being able to see strategic resources. So I'll go for this one. Next, we can choose our cargo. So this is also a pretty important choice. There's a lot of customization right at the start. This is one of the things that I quite like about Beyond Earth. You can really change your strategy based on these choices. So we can begin with extra population in our first city. We can begin with pioneering technology, which we normally need to research to train a colonist. We can get a clinic building in our first city, which will save us some production time. We can begin with a soldier unit or with a worker unit. All of these choices are pretty strong, and they definitely have their advantages. I like to begin with a worker unit, but I also like to begin with pioneering tech. I like to begin with clinic building. These are all pretty strong choices. Weapon arsenal would probably be my last choice, but it can be quite useful too. And extra population is obviously very nice as well. This is actually a pretty tough choice when you start. So I think I'll go for the worker, just to get started on improvements as soon as we begin. So I'll take that, and now we can choose a planet. These are basically map types. So I can rescan, I can go for random as always. So for example, these choices right now are a Terran world, which is a world with a few large landmasses separated by oceans and some smaller islands. We can choose a Protean world, which is one ocean and one very large continuous landmass, with a possibility of small coastal islands. So it's a little bit like Pangea, but not necessarily. Or we can choose a world with islands of varying sizes, separated by narrow water passages. There are some advanced options here. So we can go for Archipelago. We could go for Skirmish, which is mostly for multiplayer. We could pick a punishingly cold world. I will rescan. The rescan doesn't actually do a whole lot, it just changes the names, basically. So I think I'll go for Terran world. Or maybe for Protean world, actually. Large continuous landmass. Let's go for Terran, so that we'll get to use some naval units, possibly. Alright. Looks good to me. Let's get started. And get into the game. I'm really looking forward to this. Alright, so here we are, and this is what I was talking about. You do not start with an actual settler or colonist unit. You just get to choose where exactly you want your capital city to be. So you can't just move across the continent and settle your capital 20 turns into the game. This is actually not a fantastic starting location. We do have a river. We do have Xenomass, which is one of the 3 most important affinity-centered strategic resources. So that might be nice to have in city range. The city range is pretty much the same as in Civilization 5, so 3 tiles in every direction. I could settle here. And I will also get the fruit, which is a tile with 3 food, 1 energy. Energy is basically gold, money, currency. That's pretty much what it is. I can turn off the yields once I settle. Yeah, I think I'll go for this exact tile. This is not a fantastic start, but let's go for it. Alright, right here then. So here we are. I can turn on the yields and I can turn them off. I'm just going to turn them off for now. Also, since I have the scanner, I can see that there's titanium here. You do actually have to start your city to see the titanium. You don't see it before you choose your starting location, which is a little bit awkward. But in this case, we do actually have titanium in range. It's not a lot of titanium, but it's nice to have it. Now, I will be playing this game a little bit slower than I usually do, or probably much slower than I usually do, because I will spend some time showing you all the new things and exploring various options in the game. There are a lot of things that will be very familiar to anyone who played Civilization 5 a lot, but there are also a lot of new things. One of the most obvious new things is the tech web. The tech web can look a little bit small, but it actually isn't. Because first, you have these main tech nodes. So in this case, we start in the center with habitation. And you have leaves, as they are called in-game. These are sub-technologies, which are more expensive than the main node. And the further away you are from the center, the more expensive these technologies are. And these differences are really, really obvious right at the start. So right at the start on turn 1, you have these 5 techs in the middle. These 5 main nodes, which have the exact same cost. So we have habitation, which you'll start with, chemistry, physics, engineering, ecology, and genetics. And then the further away you go from the center, the more the cost goes up. And the sub-technologies are also significantly more expensive. I only need 19 turns to research genetics, and I need to research genetics to research any leaves. And these leaves, that's what the game calls them, by the way, that's why I call them that, are significantly more expensive than genetics. And if I want to go further away from the center, the tech cost really goes up a lot. 26 turns to get genetic design, 154 turns to get cognition, 500 turns to get social dynamics. So the tech web isn't actually small. And it's very non-linear. You really need to think about what exactly you want to research. I won't be going into all of these technologies right now because that would be a little bit overwhelming. This is probably the biggest part of the learning curve of Beyond Earth, actually learning what all these technologies do. Because you can't really take it by logic, you actually have to check what they all do. You can't really apply logic to this like in Civilization 5. You have to check what they all do and kind of learn it. So, I could research pioneering. This is one of the options at the start. You can start with pioneering technology, which allows you to recruit a colonist. It also allows you to recruit a trade convoy, which is basically a caravan of Beyond Earth. And the trade vessel, which is a cargo ship, that's what it is. And the trade depot. The trade routes in Beyond Earth are city-based, so if you want to get trade routes, you have to actually build a trade depot in the city you want them in. It's not global. The trade route limit is not global this time, it's actually city-based. So if I build a trade depot in my capital specifically will get 2 trade routes. And then if I want trade routes in my next city, I will have to build a trade depot there. I think I'll go for pioneering. I can also get planetary survey, which would allow me to get a work barge. Work barge is actually an improvement. It's not a unit, it's just an improvement. Sea improvement. And it would allow me to embark, or it will allow my units to embark. That part is not so important. This is something I like because it's much easier to get the ability to embark than in Civ 5. In Civ 5 you have to research optics, which can take a while. In Beyond Earth you can actually get the ability to embark on turn 16 quite easily. So that's quite good if you play on Archipelago map, for example, and if you're on a small island where you can't really expand, you can just pick up planetary survey immediately. Right, so I'll go for pioneering for now. There are quite a few important text here that we will want to research for sure. Anything that gives extra science is generally good. One of the more important texts right at the start is chemistry, because a recycler will give us more production, and more production is always very important. It also gives you plus on production from internal city or station traders, but it's the plus to production part that can really help you at the start. And you can also build laboratory for plus 2 science, and you will reveal petroleum on the map. It's not as important for me right now because I already revealed it, but if you don't start the game with the tectonic scanner or whatever it was called, it's quite important to actually reveal both petroleum and titanium on the map, because you want to know where that stuff is. Alright, so I started with the worker because that's what I picked. You also start the game with an explorer, which is basically a scout, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Every explorer in Beyond Earth has expedition modules, and you will find these equivalents of ruins in Beyond Earth that you do not load automatically. You actually have to build an expedition. There are 2 types of lootable locations on the map, equivalents of ruins. First, there are resource pods, where, as the name implies, you just get resources, you just move into them and you get stuff. And there are also these sites that you can build expeditions on and get some bigger benefits. But one explorer right now can only build 1 expedition. You can get more in the future, but I won't talk about that right now. That's a little bit later in the game. So, worker. I can build some farms. A lot of the improvements are pretty much the same as in Civ. There are a lot of new improvements, obviously, but you still have the basic farm. There's a generator, which is equivalent of a trading post from Civilization 5. You just get extra money from that one. That's what it is. I'll start with the farm. You can also start the game with 100 energy, which is actually quite important, because otherwise you start with 0. If I started with 100 energy, I could actually buy some of these tiles. I could buy at least 1 tile easily, but then I wouldn't have a worker, so even if I bought the titanium, for example, then I wouldn't have a worker. Alright, now I can build a clinic, which you can also start the game with, as you might remember, which would save me 12 turns or 60 production. But I think I'll start from Old Earth Relic, which is kind of equivalent of a monument. That's plus 2 culture. So there are virtues in the game which are equivalents of policies. I'll talk about that once I actually get enough culture for the first one. I don't want to talk about everything at once because it can be a little bit overwhelming. I'll just cover things as they come, really. So let's explore a bit. Maybe we'll find a resource pod. Right, here's a new concept in Beyond Earth, which is miasma. This is kind of a terrain feature, which makes you take damage if you keep a unit on top of it. There's a lot more to it later into the game. You can sort of take advantage of miasma, you can remove miasma, you can spread miasma. But right at the start of the game, the important part that you need to know is that if you leave a unit on top of miasma, that unit will take damage every single turn. I believe it's 10% of its health every single turn. It also slows down your movement, so you need more movement points to actually enter a tile with miasma. It's definitely something to keep in mind. And here are some aliens. Now, aliens are, as you might have guessed, equivalent of barbarians in Beyond Earth, but they are so much more than the barbarians. They are much more dangerous and quite a bit more complex than barbarians. It's not actually so obvious that you should attack aliens right away, as it is attacking barbarians in Civ 5. You can choose to ignore aliens, and you can even eventually become friendly with them, or at least they will not attack you. If you choose to attack aliens aggressively right from the start, they will definitely retaliate. And let me tell you, aliens are much more dangerous, much more aggressive, and much more unpleasant than barbarians in Civilization 5. They can attack your cities, and they have some really damn strong units, which will mess you up really badly. So yeah, don't mess with aliens. At least you can mess with aliens, but only if you really know you want to. And here's some petroleum. I definitely want to secure that. Let's move from miasma, so I'll show you what exactly I mean. Right now, my Explorer is at 90 hit points. So when I skip to the next turn, he will take minus 10 damage from Miasma, and now he's at 80. And here we got Phyraxite. That's one of the important affinity-focused strategic resources. There are 3 strategic resources which are important for affinities. I will talk about affinities as I play, but affinities are a very important concept in Beyond Earth. They are kind of like ideologies, but not really. It's a very different mechanic compared to ideologies. But they are also important for diplomacy. But anyhow, there are 3 strategic resources that are kind of tied to affinities. Phyraxite is tied to supremacy.
You have a new quest available.
Xenomass is tied to harmony. And there's also Floodstone, which is kind of tied to purity. If you go for a different affinity, it doesn't mean the other strategic resources will be useless. They will still be used for quite a few things. But the most important strategic resource, the affinity-based one, for your affinity is exactly Xenomass for harmony, Phyraxite for supremacy, and Floodstone for purity. You will eventually have to decide which your dominant affinity will be, and you'll generally want to have that strategic resource. You don't have to, you're not physically forced to have it, but it's a pretty bad idea to go for, let's say, supremacy without having any Phyraxite. That's definitely not a good idea. Alright, here we got a resource pod, so I can just move there and loot it. Also, if you're wondering what all of these resources on the map are, most of these or all of these are either strategic resources or non-tradable resources. There are no tradable luxuries in Beyond Earth. Health is the equivalent of happiness in Beyond Earth, but you do not have luxuries like on the map which you can improve, then get a copy of a luxury which will improve your happiness and then you can trade it. It doesn't work that way in Beyond Earth. There are no tradable luxuries or any equivalent. So that's something to keep in mind. Most of these non-tradable resources are good for different things. So for example, Resilin gives you +1 science when it's improved with a paddock. It also has a pretty decent base output. Most of these tiles with resources will generally have good output, and they will be improvable for basically more yields. So they are good to have, they are always good to have, as you might have guessed. So quests. Quests are another new concept in Beyond Earth. These are basically decisions that you will get from time to time. They will actually happen quite often, which will allow you to pick various benefits from things. I know that sounds a little bit vague, but it will be best when I show you an example. But you will have an option of, let's say, getting certain additional yield from a specific building, and you will get 2 options to choose between. And there are a lot of decisions like that through the game. Here we got a resource pod, and we got 50 gold, basically. Energy. I will call it gold because I can. Because that's pretty much what it is. It's the currency of this game. I got the first farm. Now I could buy the titanium, which is probably not a terrible idea. But for now I'll focus on the farms. So I'll get the farm. Once I'm done with pioneering, I'll probably want to go for one of these main nodes. Oh, also, you might have noticed that there's alien biology technology here, which allows you to clear miasma from the map. So I could go for ecology and then get alien biology, and that will allow my workers to clear miasma. Also, you might also have noticed these indicators in the tech web, which are related to affinities. These are the technologies that will give you specific affinity. So if I were to research ecology and then alien biology, I will get harmony affinity, which will give me a point up here in the top left corner, and that will give me various benefits. There's a lot more to affinities than this. You will eventually get affinity-specific units, there are affinity-specific victory conditions. But the first thing that you need to know is that affinities give you bonuses. So if I were to research alien biology, which would give me +1 harmony affinity, I would get the first bonus from harmony for having 1 point in it, which means the alien aggression level would return to neutral twice as quickly. If you just ignore aliens, they will become neutral towards you and kind of not attack you. So, as I said earlier, you shouldn't necessarily attack aliens on sight. It's not always a good idea. It's not so obvious. It's a very valid choice to ignore them and wait for them to go neutral. The other first level affinity bonuses are also quite good. So the first one, Impurity, will make aliens not attack tiles with explorer units, and this is quite important, as you might have guessed. And the first bonus in Supremacy is also quite good because it will give your explorers additional expedition, which is basically double your expedition. You have one expedition module normally, so that's effectively plus 100%, which is pretty useful. And here we got Floatstone. So Floatstone is used mostly for purity. And in each of these affinities, you will get 4 free copies of strategic resource that's used for that affinity at 6 points into that affinity. So if you ever forget which strategic resource is used for what, when you start playing the game, you can just hover over this, and you can see that Firaxite is used for Supremacy, Floatstone is used for Purity, and Xenomass is used for Harmony. Also, I definitely want to scout the general area close to my capital city for potential city locations. Here we got some geothermal, so that's an actual strategic resource. All the strategic resources are listed up here, so that's petroleum, geothermal, and titanium. These are the non-affinity ones. And you'll definitely want to secure all of these if possible. So next, I'm about to finish that old Earth relic. And I'll keep exploring. There's some alien over here, alien wolf beetle. Now the explorer is a really squishy unit. If an alien actually attacks my explorer will have a really bad time. He will die very, very easily. So, now that I've finished the relic, I might go for a clinic real quick. But I think I'll actually recruit a soldier, just in case the aliens decide to give me a hard time. And I can explore the area closest to my capital with that soldier. I could also go for a second explorer, which is not a terrible idea, considering you only get 1 copy of the expedition. That's actually a pretty solid idea. I could wait to get enough money to just buy a soldier, but that would require 240 energy. Okay, the alien moved away from us, and we discovered a crashed satellite. Yeah, because these sites will actually spawn on the map randomly during the game. They aren't just spawn on turn 0 and then they are gone forever.
Perhaps alien in nature.
So this is an artifact, and now I can use my expedition module to check that out. I will definitely go there and check it out. However, that's going to happen in the next part. I'm going to finish this one here and continue in the next episode. If you enjoyed this first episode, please consider leaving a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.